Hi guys, welcome back to the stream. We're still right in the middle of things, right in the thick of it, at Adobe Symposium 2019. And for this session, we've got Paul Burnett, who is the Principal Evangelist for Asia Pacific.
Yep.
And Paul, you're going to take us through a quick kind of Dimensions demo.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Dimensions, for those of you who don't know, is the application. It's a fairly young application. It's only a year, 2 years old. And it's the application that we use for taking 2D imagery and 3D objects and combining them together to make photorealistic output.
Right.
It's also, and I'll talk about this maybe a little bit more in a while, it's also the application that is going to be sort of the basis for some of the augmented reality technology that we've been talking about launching called Project Aero as well in the future. But for now, I'm just going to show Dimension. So if I jump into Dimension, really sort of simple to get started. And this is one of the things that we've sort of looked at with Dimension, because if I'll click on Create New, and it will open up a window. Let's just increase the size of that so it's on the screen. And one of the problems that we've noticed with designers in the past is that whenever they open up a 3D application and they look at the perspective grid on the screen, most of them quit and tiptoe away very quietly.
Yes.
It scares.
I would agree with that, absolutely.
It scares people a lot. So what we've done is try to make it a lot easier for people to sort of get started in. There's a whole bunch of assets that come in Dimension. You can see I've got all of these starter assets down here, from 3D models right through to materials to place on the models.
And these come with the program?
They come with it, yeah, so automatically. Awesome. Some lighting available for it, and also some graphics and bitmaps, etc., as well in there. So what I'm going to do is just start with a really, really simple project, just get something built straight away. Now, like all of our applications, I also have access to my Creative Cloud libraries.
Right.
So whatever I create in Photoshop, I can save to a library, and I can open up directly into Dimension. So if I open up my libraries, I've got a library here with a couple of objects in it. And this picture that I've got here is actually one that I got from Adobe stock. Just downloaded it, licensed it. And all I need to do, I don't need to drag it anywhere or do anything. I'm just going to click on it, and it's going to add it to my scene, and it's going to become the background of my scene. I'm just going to click on it, and it's going to add it to my scene.
Right.
Okay. Now, straight away, you'll notice something that's a little bit weird about it. I've got the picture in here, but my perspective grid that was open originally is not matching the image. So if you were to imagine that my 2D image was in 3D space, it's not matching it.
Right.
But I've got a little button across here in my properties called Match Image. And when I click on that, it's actually going to use Adobe Sensei, our artificial intelligence framework, is going to look at that 2D image and think, what would that be like if it was actually in 3D space?
Right, so it matches the perspective of the image. That's really smart.
So it's looking at the perspective of it, not just the perspective. It looks at that and it's going to work that out. It's also looking at the image to see where is the lighting in this image, like the interior lighting, like lights.
Right.
And it's going to put the lighting in my scene based on that lighting. It's also going to look and see, is there any sunlight in the screen? And if there is, that's where it's going to put my sunlight in the scene as well. All of this is being done using Adobe Sensei. So all I need to do is click OK. And as I click it, you'll see the perspective suddenly change to match the table that's in there.
Wow, yeah, that's done that really well, actually. That's really awesome.
Yeah, so I don't need to do anything, and now I know that if I put something in the scene, it's going to fit in the scene and look realistic.
So the idea here is that you've created a scene and you're going to drop in a 3D model
3D
of
object,
something,
and it will look as though it's sitting in that scene.
Right.
Yeah.
So it'll be in perspective, lit properly,
I hope
all
so.
kind of done for you.
let's give it a try.
Fingers crossed.
So I'm going to jump from my libraries back to the starter assets, and it just so happens that in my starter assets I've got a coffee cup in here. Again, don't need to do anything. I can drag it on if I want, but I'm just going to click on it and it's going to add it to the scene for me and place it in the scene.
Wow.
Now, one of the things you'll notice straight away, one is it's sitting on the table nicely, which is great, but also you'll notice that the shadow is coming towards us and it's quite dark. And that's because if you look at the image, all the lighting is in the background.
In the distance, yeah.
And is coming forward. So it's actually using the correct lighting from the scene. But I don't particularly like that. I want to light up the cup a bit and highlight that as a bit of an ad. So if I come across in my scene over here, I have, at the moment, I've got three things. I've got the coffee cup that I just added, my camera, and the environment. So when I click on the environment, I've got all this control over what the actual area is like, this pretend coffee shop that doesn't really exist. I can go and change things like the environment light and the intensity of the environment light. I can rotate that environment light around as well. But what I want to do is jump into the sunlight, and I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to what I'm going to do is rotate it, the sunlight around. So the sunlight is now where it's sort of to my left behind me. Let's change the time of day a little bit by just raising the sun up.
This is like a little time-lapse video.
Yeah. So I'm sort of happy with that. I quite like the effect that it has, but I want to move the cup, make it a little bit bigger on the table. So I've got three tools. These top three tools in the toolbar across here are the ones you use the most. The first one is move, the second one is scale, and the third one is rotate. They're really the tools that I'm going to use the majority of the time. So the first one, I obviously want to move it. And if I select the cup, you'll see that I've got some like directional arrows here that I could use to move it, or I could just grab the cup and move it like from anywhere, and you'll notice that it's changing. It's on the table the whole time.
So it's locked onto that plane, and
it knows what the perspective is and the vanishing point of the horizon line, etc. I like it there, but I also want it a little bit bigger, so I grab the scale tool and I can just scale that cup up where I want it to be, sort of in my image, make it happy. And I want to do a big ad for this coffee cup or coffee brand. Okay, so the next thing I obviously need to do, I've got the sort of lighting's looking okay. I like the size, the scale, the positioning and everything. But the next thing that I want to do is actually put some textures or materials, we call them, onto the cup to make it look quite realistic. And you'll notice that across here with the coffee cup, it actually comes, this particular model that I got out of the library comes in two parts. It's got the cup and the lid. Okay. Now, I could use these ones from the library here. I could also go out to Adobe Stock, and there's lots of 3D models built specifically for Dimension. Or I can go anywhere on the web and find a 3D model that I like, or if I've already got some 3D models I like, I can just bring those straight in.
So there's a bit of kind of like crowd contribution here where people would make these models and you can grab them?
There's huge amounts of them out there. Cool. People build lots of 3D content and put them up. So you can find a lot of models, and you'll maybe see that a little bit later, the sorts of things you can get. So, okay, so I've got the cup and the lid. First of all, I'm going to do the lid. I'll just select the lid, and I want that to be like a black plastic lid. So I'm going to jump to across to my starter assets and change to the materials panel. And inside here, I've got, just right near the top, I've got a plastic. And if I click on that, it's sort of okay, but it's a brown plastic. It's not what I want. I just come across, and I have huge amount of control over changing that plastic, changing the colour, the shininess of it, the roughness of it, how metallic it is. And I can do all of that in this panel here. So the first thing I want to do is make it black. So I'm just going to change the colour down and make it black.
I can really see that shiny plastic now.
It's seriously shiny at the moment. In fact, if anything, it's possibly a little bit too. So I'm just going to make that a little bit rougher so I get a little bit more of a shine on it. Take off some of that metal. Yeah, a little bit nicer now. It's not quite so shiny and sharp, but I still get that nice little light highlight on there, which is sort of quite cool. Okay, so if I jump back up, I'm happy with the lid, but what about the cup itself? So if I choose the cup, one of the other materials I've got across here is cardboard. And I'm going to click on the cardboard. And whoops, I'm going to click on the cardboard.
Are the materials like the models, as in like they're also being added to constantly by?
So that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked that. So this particular material that I've got in here, these ones in the library, just recently Adobe acquired a company called, or I forgot the name of the company, but create the Substance content. So this is actually a Substance material. What does that mean? It's got a lot more control over it than sort of basic materials. And in fact, if you look across in my panel now, with the cardboard, because it was built in Substance and brought into here, put in the library, I can control things like the fiber intensity of my
Right, okay.
cardboard. I mean, this is insane. You know, you've got an incredible amount of control. So if I want to, I can change the intensity of the fiber, the color, the roughness of the cardboard, and then a whole range of luminosity, contrast, hue shift, all of these additional things. And I've got that now because we are able to work with all of the substance materials and bring them straight in.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've got the cardboard on there, happy with that, happy with the lid, but I want to put some branding on it. So I'm going to jump back to my library assets, and inside Illustrator, I created a logo for my coffee called Mad Coffee. And I'm just going to drag that and bring it across and put it on the cup.
So is that the actual AI file from Illustrator?
Just in my library.
Okay, so the two programs like talk to each other. Yeah,
Happily.
cool.
Could be from Photoshop, a bitmap from Photoshop. It could be an Illustrator file. This is an Illustrator file. And in fact, what's sort of cool is if I have an Illustrator file with various artboards, I might have different. I'm just going to shrink that down a little bit because it's stressing me out a bit. But you see how it's fitting on the
Oh
cup
yeah,
quite
because it's like molded onto the thing.
it's
Yeah.
mapped onto it. So, but I might have different artboards in Illustrator, and I might have Mad Coffee, Mad Juice, Mad Beans, and basically when I bring it across, it's the one file, but I can bring it in here and I can just swap between those images in here, and it will just swap between the artboards for me. Really, really simple. Okay, I can put that on the cup, put it where I want it. Again, I can come across. I'm using that as a decal, like a sticker, but I can also use it as fill now. And if I do it as fill, I can either do that to fill the whole area or to repeat normally or to repeat by mirror as well. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep.
Can I ask you actually? So if this is an AI file, if I've done this in Illustrator and then I've mocked it all up, I've done all the lighting, all that kind of work, and then I actually want to make a change to the logo, will that then update in Dimensions as well?
Yeah, as long as I update the library version of it, yes.
Okay.
We now have linking, and this is a recent addition that we've had. Before it was, once I brought it in here, the link was cut. Now the link's available.
So you don't have to replace it and redo all the work. That's awesome.
Which is sort of cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So look, this is the most, up to now, this is the most simple thing I could build in Dimension. I've got a background, I've got a 3D model, a couple of materials, a decal on it, and that's it. So at the moment, I've just been working in the design panel and designing my scene. This is super simple.
Yep.
I now come across to render, and inside the render panel, I can choose a whole bunch of different things in here. Obviously, first of all, the file name, I'm going to call it Untitled so I can find it later. I've got different qualities in here I can render to. We're using an incredible industry standard renderer, which is beautiful, like absolutely awesome. If you do the high quality one, it's going to take a while to do that, but give you really an incredibly photorealistic image. Doing the low one, you actually still get a really good render, but you get a lot faster as well.
So that'll be good for like just sending a quick preview to a client where you don't have waiting.
And then when you're happy with it.
Right.
Now the cool thing is we've also just added cloud beta, so for rendering in the cloud. So if I'm going to do a high quality one, it's going to take some time. I'm just going to do it in the cloud. It's going to be a lot faster because we've got some huge servers running doing it. It'll just upload my project for me, do the render. My machine, I can keep working on my machine, no dramas, and when it's ready, it'll come back down, which is sort of cool. That's just in beta, but we're working on improving it. I can do it as a Photoshop file or a PNG file. I'm going to start the render, by the way. So I'm just going to render it out low quality as a Photoshop file. And the reason for doing it to Photoshop is it's actually going to give me everything as layers.
Oh, wow.
And the beauty of that means I can come in and do a little bit of retouching sometimes. And sometimes there's some little bits of retouching that you want to do depending on the image. Because remember, I've got a 2D background here. I did one image where I put the coffee cup on the beach on some sand. The image in the background was the sand. But the sand has got a ripple.
Yeah, right.
And when you put the cup on it, the shadow is straight. So all I did was I took it into Photoshop and just on the ripple, I just touched a bit of the ripple out and it made it look
You could mask out the front of the cup a little bit to sort of sunken into the sand. Right.
Exactly. So that's now rendered out. We covered that talking very well. So if I jump out onto my desktop now, here's the untitled file that I just created. If I open it up in Photoshop, you'll notice that the background is separate to the model.
Yeah.
But also I've got these additional layers in here which are really useful that show me where the objects are. I can select the material, I can select the object, or I can select the depth of my scene. So it's actually even seeing like the depth information of the table and everything inside.
So this would be handy
as
to
well.
make sort of quick selections if you want to change the color of the lid or the cup
Exactly.
or whatever. It's all that information is there for you to easily select.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So and if I wanted to clean up the shadow in here, I could turn these off. I've got the shadow inside here. So actually this selection is useful. This one here, I can select the cup, select the inverse, and then I can touch the shadow without touching the cup.
Yeah, right.
So it's all done for me. I can come in here and just sort of touch up that shadow a little bit if I want. Okay, enough of that. Let's jump back into Dimension. Now, that's sort of cool. I've used this, I've built this one, and everything in there I already had on my machine. It was all pre-built, and you're sort of going, well, okay,
It's kind of cheating.
that's fine, you know. So how about we try and create something from scratch in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back into Photoshop, and I'm going to create a new file inside here. I'll select that one and click Create, and I'll just get rid of those guides.
So can I ask you, just while we're doing this, where does Dimension sit in sort of the average creative's workflow? So like I'm an illustrator, for instance. So how would I use Dimensions with a client? Is it purely just sort of a mock-up?
So there's a bunch of ways of using it. One of them is instead of going straight out and doing a photo shoot, is actually starting to do a mock-up first and seeing what it would like with the photo shoot before you do it. But what we're finding is because it's so photorealistic, we're finding now that people are actually using it and bypassing the photo shoot completely.
Right.
A lot of companies have got 3D models. For fact, I don't know if you know, IKEA, their catalogue, the vast majority of the content in their catalogue is 3D objects. They have all of their stuff. So they're looking at building all of their marketing material in 3D. So they're not photos. They have the photo of the room, and then they're putting the 3D objects into them.
Right.
So using
that's
Dimension.
fantastic.
Okay, I've created. Originally maybe just a mock-up thing, but now people are actually using it as finished art. Doing it as well. So, okay, I've brought in here an Illustrator file into Photoshop, an Illustrator file of the Creative Cloud logo, just created in Illustrator, brought into Photoshop. I'm going to go to my 3D panel, and I'm going to say, extrude this layer in 3D. It's going to ask me, do I want to move to my 3D interface? Yes, I do. So it's moved me across to there. As you can see, it's extruded, but it's extruded very wide. So I'm just going to shrink that back a little bit. I'm going to come on here, and hopefully I'm just going to move that back onto the middle there. Sort of happy with that. I'm also going to curve the edges a little bit, make it a little bit nice so it's not so sharp. You won't cut yourself on it. I'll choose the contours on here. I'll choose the one I like. I'm just going to increase that width. I can go, whoa, way too far, but let's just pull that back a little bit.
So at this stage, you're not worried about the perspective in the actual image?
No,
that you're
I just want an object. I'm building a 3D object. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And remember, I could get these from anywhere. I can download them on the web, etc. But I can also create my own like this. So from 3D, I'm going to go export that 3D layer. And for this purpose, I'm going to choose a wavefront object file, OBJ file. So the OBJ file, I can just port straight into Dimension. I'm just going to click OK, save that on the desktop. Let's create a new folder and save it in. I'll call that Untitled. I'll call the object Untitled and click Save. And all done. So I'm done inside Photoshop. I can then jump back into Dimension. Now, this morning I'm going to let's create a new project. I'm not going to save that one, although it was awesome, but I'll create a new blank one. Now, just before I came on, I stood outside with my mobile phone and I took a picture of the booth we're in filming in today. So I'm going to import that, and I'll just import an image as a background, just to prove that all of this happens. So if I go to my desktop, there's the booth JPEG that I shot a minute ago. This is when I was on the outside. So this is the booth. I'm going to use that as my background. Again, I'm going to match the image, and I'm going to see, will it do the environment light? Yes, it'll do the camera perspective. Oh, interesting. It won't do the sunlight because we're inside. There's no sunlight in here. So it's
detected that there's no daylight.
Pretty intelligent.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm going to click OK. That doesn't mean I can't add sunlight later, but initially it's not there. Yeah. Okay, so you'll see now the perspective plane has done the floor perfectly for me. This is an image I took with my phone. It's not set up or anything. I'm now going to import that 3D model, And
So this is the one that you just made in Photoshop.
the one that's made in the untitled folder and the untitled object that I created. I'm just going to open that up and whoa, it's huge.
Oh, right, yeah.
Sometimes this will happen and the size that I created it at was much bigger. So obviously I'm going to grab my scale tool and I'm just going to bring that way back down to fit. You can see it's sitting on the floor here. If I want that to be, I can still change perspective of it, even, or not perspective, but change the size of it, the width, etc. Inside here, I can come and grab my rotate tool and I can rotate that around on the floor where I want it to be. I can also come across to my environment. I'm going to add a little bit of sunlight. See, turn the sunlight off because we're inside. I'm going to turn that on. Let's make it a bit cloudier. Let's change the height. Let's change the rotation so I can see where it is. Yeah, a bit of a shadow on there. I sort of quite like that effect, even though there is no sun. That'll do. And then I'm going to I'll jump back to the logo. I'm going to jump into my starter assets again and find a material that I want to place on there. Again, the materials, if I create one somewhere else or I get objects, etc. And in fact, even on Adobe Capture on the phone, you can photograph something and bring it in as a texture into Dimension as well, which is pretty cool. But what shall I use? What shall I make it? Shall I do a metal?
Yeah, make it metal. Make it nice and chrome and shiny. And
okay, that's quite tacky, but anyway, let's do it. Let's do it. So I'm just going to add the metal to it. I'm going to add the metal to it. Yeah, there we go. Okay, and again, it is quite tacky, extreme, isn't it? It's like it reminds me sort of like 1980s chrome car. Yeah. Also, while I'm doing this, I can actually open up a little panel at the top here, which just shows me a really quick render. Okay. It's not. I can also sort of zoom that up to show me the whole screen and just see what it's going to look like, but it's sort of quick and instant sort of render, give me a bit of a feel for it.
The metallic has picked up the rest of the image as a reflection.
It's reflecting it as though it's 3D. Cool. That's frightening, isn't it? Yeah. So I'm going to close that back down just to up there. I'm sort of happy with that. You know, I can move it around more or play with it, but you get the idea. This is a file that literally I've taken a snapshot and I've built the 3D object, brought them in together.
And that's super fast as well. And really quick to
and the
to
quality,
get to this point.
once you render this out using the render, and especially the high quality, but even the low quality one, you'd be really surprised. The shadows, the reflections, everything just look absolutely beautiful. I also have the ability, if I go back to my scene again, just a couple of other features I haven't shown. If I jump back to my camera, I can actually adjust the focal area of the camera and turn this on. What does that mean? Like any normal camera with like a DSLR, etc., I can adjust the aperture of the camera to give me that nice depth of field.
Oh, yeah, right.
So I can make sure that, say, for example, you know, one 3D object is sharp in focus and the other one's further forward of that nice blurry sort of out of focus sort of look. As well. So I've got a lot of control also over the field of view of my camera. So basically I've got a full-on camera in here that I can change all of the lenses, etc.
So this program works on quite a few different levels then?
Yeah. And in fact, let me, just before we finish off, let me show you a couple of projects that I worked on just using this. So I don't know if you know, but I actually have quite a large Scottish heritage. I'm like I think 44% Scottish,
Precisely.
believe it or not, with all my DNA testing. So I live in Singapore and I belong to the St Andrews Society. We had the Singapore Sevens, rugby sevens recently, and we were promoting the Scottish team coming. So I wanted to do a little project for that. And let me open it up. I built a little video, so I won't save the one we just did. Let's just open up. This is a locker room for the rugby, but it's all built in Dimension. Absolutely everything in this file that's about to load, there's a lot of content in there, is all built inside Dimension, all 3D objects.
So no
Some of them I had to get, sorry?
No photography, no
photography whatsoever. Everything in here is in 3D. Now you look at it and you go, well, it doesn't look that real sort of sitting inside here.
Yeah, the lighting's a little bit flat.
But once I come out and render it, and I get the lighting right and I render it, this is what the room looks like here. So,
wow, yeah.
And cool. If you look at things like, see the bag down here on the floor, it seriously looks like it's a real bag.
That's 3D. That's not
This
a
is all
photograph.
3D.
Right.
Everything in this is 3D. The logos, like the decal, you saw me put the Scottish Rugby logos are put on like the decal
Yeah.
and the other stuff. The footballs, the shirt, and everything up here. A little bit of haggis in the cans there.
Gotta do
and
that.
I actually used this background for a video that I was making.
Right.
I'm not going to play the whole video, but let's just play maybe just the little first part of the video here.
Okay, so you're superimposing more stuff on top.
Yeah, we used a green screen. Had a little bit of fun. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but there's the background of the locker room, a green screen video on top of it with. Let's not play any more of that. And the last one I did, I also did another thing for the St Andrews Society, the Scottish Society there, and this entire room that I'm opening up here is also all built in Dimension. Absolutely every single thing in that is built in Dimension. All of them are 3D objects with
images,
with content mapped to the 3D object. And one of the things that's interesting about this one is the candles. I actually struggled for a while with the candles, getting a nice glow, getting a nice light out of them because I couldn't turn them up high enough. If I jump back into Dimension and I pick an object in here, let's say the ball, and I come across to, I'm just trying to find something in here, so I wonder if I can do it with the ball. I've got this slider called glow, and I can turn up the glow on the rugby ball. So if I wanted to do like a candle or a light or add additional lighting, I can add glow to it. But the trouble is my slider goes to 100 and the glow for the candles just wasn't bright enough.
Yeah, right.
So it took me ages. I kept playing around with it for ages, thinking really frustrated. Oh, should I put more objects on top of each other, etc. And then I thought, oh no, you just come in and I can type in 5,000%. I can type in whatever number I like and I can actually control the lighting.
Yeah.
So there's a sort of a little hidden tip and trick inside Dimension for you.
Cool. Well, I think that's all the time we've got for today. It's been super interesting actually kind of watching this program because it's really powerful and I think it works on a bunch of different ways for designers to kind of do what they want.
Yep.
So yeah, thanks for the demo. It's been really great to have you on and yeah, stay tuned, guys. We've got far more content for you guys for the rest of the day as well. We're still going to be live from the show floor. So yeah, thanks very much, Paul, and we'll catch you guys soon.